Hey, what's up guys? In this video I'm going to be quickly going over the Night Fae Covenant and my thoughts on how good this will be for Shamans. Keep in mind that these things might change before launch and this is just an overview of what it looks like right now. Sadly, they took away our level 60 pre-made characters, which means I'll have to go over everything on Wowhead and I can't really show you the abilities. If you do want to see these abilities at work, you can always check out my Twitch when I'm raid testing, or you can look them up on YouTube. So first, let's go over the Covenant ability that everybody gets. This is called Soul Shape. It's an ability on a 1.5 minute cooldown that when you use it, you will teleport 15 yards ahead and increase your movement speed by 50%. And most importantly, it's gonna turn you into a fox. This lasts for 12 seconds or infinitely when you're in the rested area. As far as I know, you'll be able to unlock different soul shape forms, which means that later in the expansion, not everyone will look the exact same, which is quite a nice detail. It's the same way that the Legion artifacts worked. Now for Shaman, you might think that this isn't very useful since we have Ghost Wolf, which is very good for general traveling, but they recently improved the soul shape ability to give you 50% more movement speed, which makes it 20% faster than Ghost Wolf, baseline without talents that is. Of course, Ghost Wolf still has the benefit of not being slowed below base movement speed, which will make it better in a fair amount of situations. But what's the harm in having both? If you want to quickly move around, you can go in Soul Shape, and if you're being slowed, you can go into Ghost Wolf. What I see as probably the most useful part about the Soul Shape, however, is the blink 15 yards ahead. So the first use is that it works like Mage Blink. So if you use it when you get knocked in the air, you can instantly go back on the floor. You can also blink across things like beams that would damage you without taking any damage. One example that I think has been really useful in the first raid tier will be on the pre-last boss. The boss will jump to someone and leave a puddle dealing damage, plus the existing puddles will also deal damage. What you can do with Soul Shape, however, is you can just blink out just before he lands, while standing in another zone. Because of this, you can pretty much stack these zones without taking any damage as many times as you want. Of course, it's still to be determined if you'll need the space on Mythic, so maybe it's not even needed, but it is cool to know that this works. Now the Shaman specific ability you get is Fae Transfusion. This ability is a channel on a 2-minute cooldown that spawns a zone that will deal damage to up to 4 enemies during its channel. So if you would have to cancel it, you would still do some damage as opposed to not dealing any damage. It says the ability lasts 3 seconds, but for me it has always been less, so I think it scales with haste, and since haste for enhancement will be pretty important, most likely it won't feel like such a long time. After the channel, your Fae Transfusion will get another use if you press it again. The ability stores 25% of the damage you dealt with it as healing, so if you press the button again, you will heal up to 8 allies nearby. In other words, you can heal 8 people to full HP instantly, no matter how much HP they had before. There is some upsides and downsides to this. If you use it at specific times just before huge damage comes in, you can make your healers love you, since you can fully heal 8 people no matter their HP. The downside, however, is that in most situations it will mostly do overhealing, as compared to the Kyrian Vesper Totem, which will do a lot more reliable healing and way less overhealing. So in my opinion, this healing aspect is worth a lot, as it has saved me a lot of Mythic Plus pulls where the healer basically gets overwhelmed and he suddenly just top everyone including the tank instantly. And usually the healers have a good amount of sustain already in raids, which means that Vesper does help, but the healers might be doing overhealing. It completely depends on the situation, of course. So do note that with the gear levels I played with, on single targets you're not gonna heal people full most likely, since you won't be doing enough damage to have 25% of that damage be enough to heal someone full. Now this is beta, of course, so the numbers are not final, but on paper it does less damage than Vesper Totem. However, if you looked at Enhancement or Elemental before, you'll probably know about this legendary with the effect called Elemental Equilibrium. One part of this legendary is dealing frost damage increases the damage of your next nature spell by 25%. So if you are the Frost Shock build, which right now is pretty much uncontested in how strong it is, you will do frost damage regularly, which means you don't even have to go out of your way to get the buff. You just need to make sure you don't cast a Chain Lightning or a Lightning Bolt before your Fae Transfusion. One more note here is that for all we know, they will make the Elemental Shaman legendary not work for Enhancement, which would mean that this Covenant ability might only be able to be boosted more by Elemental Shamans or Restoration Shamans. Now there is also a conduit called Essential Extraction, which will increase the damage and the channel by 15% more baseline, up to 30% at max rank. So what this means, it will channel it 15% faster, but it will also do 15% more damage than before. So with these two things combined, that amount of burst damage you do is increased by a lot. Sadly, I can't check in game if they work additively or multiplicatively, since I don't have access to these things anymore, but either way it's very strong. The mastery of Enhancement is also supposed to increase nature damage, but as far as I know it didn't seem to scale with it, so I guess if it would, that would make this ability the uncontested best one for Enhancement, so maybe that's a good thing, because later on in the expansion you would get so much mastery that no other ability could probably get close to it. Now if you would compare Vesper Totem and Fae Transfusion, I would say that Night Fae has a ton more burst, especially with the legendary, and you can top people off in an emergency instantly, which can be very valuable. On single target, Vesper is the clear winner just because they have the conduit that increases its damage by 200% on the closest target, and it also doesn't lock you into a cast, which means that your normal abilities will get more uses, which is nice, and it won't do overhealing as much. In AoE situations, it's hard to tell which one would win, but when I did dungeons with Kena who played Vesper Totem, Fae Transfusion was a way bigger percentage of my damage than Vesper Totem was for him, so it did feel stronger, and it sure as hell to me felt more satisfying to be bursting 20k when I engage with a pack. But in the 2 seconds that I cast the ability, of course he can get in other abilities since his Vesper Totem is pretty much instant, so it is hard to compare the actual value of the ability. Overall, I think Night Fae is the most fun to play since both the class ability and the default Covenant ability are more fun to play with than any of the other abilities I've tested. For progress, however, I'm gonna have to see what the simulations say, but the chance is big that I'm gonna be going Kyrian instead because of the bleed removal, which if it is as important as we fear it is, then most people will have to go Kyrian. That being said, after progress I might just swap to Night Fae again, since I enjoy it a lot more, plus the damage of Fae Transfusion is better than Vesper in a large amount of situations from what I've seen. Of course, this will also probably depend on if the legendary will still work for Enhancement or just work on this ability in general. Now the soulbinds, I'm gonna go over those in another video, since most people mainly care about the main flavor of the Covenant, and the soulbinds, they're pretty much extra, and they're also very likely to get some changes. So the info I give now might be outdated next week. If you do want this to be in the same video as the overviews, just tell me in the comments and I might change it up in the next video. But for now, I hope to see you next video.